Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. We have heard, at least in the mainstream news, next to nothing about what is the largest strike in human history. Over 250 million Indians have protested against neoliberal laws that were put in place by Narendra Modi's government on Constitution Day in India. This happened on Thursday, and I'm only making a video about it now because a lot of stuff has been happening internationally, and I myself only found out about this on Sunday. So here's why this is glorious beyond just being the biggest strike in human history. It happened on Constitution Day, which is a very important day in India because it recognizes the day that the Indian Constitution was passed in 1949. And additionally, this is wonderful because it showed, even in India, what many would consider a only newly industrialized nation, they managed to organize and spread the word so quickly and effectively and organized so effectively that they brought public and private sector workers together in massive protests and strikes across the country. India's only got 1.2 billion people. Basically, you're looking at about 1 in 5 Indians participated in this with very little notice and just a lot of anger in their voices. And I wish this made more news. But of course, it's not going to in the mainstream media, right? Because why would they want you, your average working Joe, to know the power that you have, you and your coworkers have, if you just get together and strike and demand better from your governments? A better world is possible, but they don't want you to know how to achieve it or how effective it can be in various other countries. They don't want that because they like their current system of exploitation that nets them record and excessive profits. So hats off to the Indians who did this. History has literally been made in this instance. And on top of that, I want to give a particular shout out to a lot of this work has actually been done by strong union forces and I think communists and Marxist Leninists in India. So hats off to them for also helping to organize very effectively. And hats off to the struggling Indian farmers who knew their rights and stood their ground, and is hopefully going to get concessions from Narendra Modi's government. Now, with regards to these policies themselves, I'll put some links down below that go into more detail about the background of this. But basically, Modi's government, again, being very authoritarian and, pro-capitalism, wanted to enact some very neoliberal reforms, basically eliminating worker rights and protections. And it just was not a good thing for the country of India, which already struggles with these in the first place in many regards. So seeing the farmers come together, and not just for themselves, but to also drum up so much public support in India, is very crucial. And I think that's probably the main point that has been the reason for why they're not talking about this in Western media. Because if protesters got sympathy, then something becomes a larger sustained movement beyond the one community that is being affected by a policy. And so if there's what communists and leftists in general like to call solidarity in this case, that's a problem because it creates a united front. And in a nation of over 1 billion people, a united front of up to 250 million people is really hard to deal with internally. That's why they don't want this making the news. And that's why it is absolutely crucial that people share these sources and show people what has happened, how it's happened, and perhaps take some lessons for how we can implement that here in our corners of the world, whether we're Canadian, American, German, Polish, Australian, Brazilian, South African. We can take lessons from here and from other successful movements from around the world. And it's highly imperative that we do so if we want to actually create this better world that we know is possible. And so I really, really hate that this kind of good news, objectively good news that the world could use in a pandemic year, is being pushed to the backside by capitalist forces who own most major media companies because they just want to make even a little bit more money. And the fact that they are still willing to extract every tiny little ounce of profit that they can from desperate and struggling peoples, even when they could be helping share a good news story and improve the morale and the well-being of the vast majority of humanity while still being profitable, that disgusts me. And that is what's bothering me today.